Good evening and thank you for joining us. Yesterday's $10 daycare announcement may be good news for many parents, but may not be for those stuck on a wait list.
The subsidized daycare announcement by the Ford and Trudeau governments could mean big savings for some, but local childcare providers and agencies say the new funding doesn't do anything to address the lack of available spaces. Lee Noonan has more on that.
Families with children under 6 who are in licensed daycare could see a significant decrease in the fees they pay. Lindsay Gaw-Martin, CEO of Little Lions Waldorf Child and Family Center, which has 10 locations around the city, says daycare fees are a barrier for many families, particularly with infant programs, which are expensive to run. She sees the announcement as very good news, but she does have reservations.
We're really excited to see lower fees so that, childcare is more affordable for as many people as possible. Come with that is also some concern because, we are in a major staffing crisis right now. The whole sector is very short-staffed, and I don't really think that's going to change yet with this implementation until wages can go up.
The DSAB will administer the new funding in the Thunder Bay District. CAO Bill Bradica echoes the concern that the new wage floor will not be high enough to attract and retain early childhood education workers.
There's some significant education and accreditation requirements that are needed, and this isn't babysitting. This is early education, and so we have seen for many years competition essentially with the school boards for people with those qualifications.
His hope is that new subsidized daycare spaces could be created if currently unlicensed home daycare providers were motivated to become licensed and apply for the new funding. Otherwise, he says, this initiative could actually increase wait lists as more parents seek out the subsidized spaces. There is currently a wait list of over 2,400 spaces, more than half of which are for an immediate need. At Little Lions, for example, no new spaces will be opening until 2023.
Unfortunately, there are people that sit on that wait list and never get a space. And that breaks my heart. I wish there was a way to fix that, but there just is not the capacity.
Despite the reservations, everyone we spoke to for this story agreed that making daycare affordable is an essential and long-awaited step forward.
This announcement has been, I think this is the 4th or 5th time federally it's come up, so it's happening. So it's quite exciting for someone who's been around a long time. And I think the benefits of how it will assist families moving forward is it's just phenomenal.
This will make a significant difference for parents with children under the age of 6 who are accessing licensed childcare.
Everyone is really happy. I mean, like I said, it is a positive thing. We definitely want to see lower fees for families.
Lee Noonan, TBT News.
The emergency room shutdown in Red Lake this past weekend has led to growing concerns that it won't be an isolated incident and that the ERs could suddenly shut down at other small hospitals in the Northwest. The Red Lake closure was due to a physician shortage. It lasted for 24 hours from Saturday morning to Sunday morning. The chair of the Northwest Regional Chief of Staff Council, Dr. Sarah Vanderloo, says doctors are the most acute need at the moment, but hospitals are also struggling due to a lack of nurses. She says the staffing problems are widespread, and a number of hospitals have just barely avoided ER closures. That includes her own hospital in Atikokan, where she works as the Chief of Staff. Vanderloo says it's only a matter of time before other small and medium-sized hospitals have to close their ER doors, forcing those in need of emergency service to travel elsewhere.
It's been at risk for happening for quite some time, and especially the last few months, and we're anticipating that it will happen in other sites, including larger sites such as Sioux Lookout, Kenora, which have been very close to closing. Dryden, within the next few months, I wouldn't be surprised at all if one or more hospitals undergoes a closure, much like the one that happened in Red Lake.
Vanderloo doesn't believe Thunder Bay is at risk at the moment, but she notes the closure of smaller hospital ERs across the region would have a ripple effect across the system that could affect the Health Sciences Centre.
Thunder Bay Police Board member Georgianne Morisseau has filed a third human rights complaint and is now taking a leave of absence from the board until the end of April. Morisseau continues to accuse the police board of racism and retaliatory action against her following her first complaint to the Human Rights Tribunal. This latest complaint seeks personal damages totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars from the board, its chair and secretary, as well as its public relations firm and the city. Despite all the controversy and allegations, Morisseau has kept her seat on the police board until now. Her lawyer says she now needs time to deal with family matters and prepare to answer questions from the Ontario Civilian Police Commission regarding her complaints against the board and the police force.
A Thunder Bay man accused of second-degree murder has been committed to stand-by trial by judge alone in December. 44-year-old Jeffrey Miller was arrested by city police in March of 2019 and charged in connection with the death of a 21-year-old Robinson St. Jean from Ottawa. Officers were called to the Hilldale and Melbourne Road area in the afternoon after a passerby called 911 about an injured man on the ground. Paramedics transported St. Jean to the regional hospital where he died from his injuries. Miller was arrested the next day. The trial will begin on December 12th and is expected to last 2 weeks. Miller's lawyer, George Joseph, says there will be several requests presented to the judge during the trial, including an alternate suspect application.
COVID-19 hospitalizations are up across Ontario, fueling concern about a possible sixth wave of the pandemic. This as the government introduces what it's calling the plan to stay open in preparation for future pandemics. Siobhan Morris has those details.
Even though a reliable count of how many people in Ontario are sick with COVID-19 is elusive,
there are more cases now than there were a week ago and 2 weeks ago. We could call this a wave. We just don't know the size of the wave, but it's here.
wave number 6, thought to be driven by the BA2 subvariant. Ontario's science table says the number of COVID infections is doubling about every 10 days. The number of Ontarians admitted to hospital with the virus up 143 in the last week. The jump comes at a delicate time for Ontario hospitals, doctors, and nurses.
If we are not careful, people that are waiting for surgeries and procedures will again be postponed because we don't have enough human resources at this point in the system.
The provincial government is trying to entice healthcare workers to the field with a series of measures, including making permanent a pandemic pay bump for long-term care workers.
We are creating new financial grant programs for the healthcare sectors and reducing registration barriers for foreign credentialed medical professionals so they can apply their skills here when it's needed most.
The feeling from the opposition is that what the government calls its plan to stay open falls short.
They've been told loudly and clearly they have to get rid of their low-wage policy. They have to scrap Bill 124.
The legislation that caps public sector pay increases at 1% a year.
Until the government addresses low wages, low benefits, and poor working conditions for frontline healthcare workers, we are going to face capacity limitations within our healthcare system. This plan fails to address that.
An ongoing challenge for the COVID-19 pandemic and pandemics ahead.
And COVID-19 hospitalizations and ICU admissions are both up today at the Regional Health Sciences Centre. 24 cases in the hospital, up from 22 yesterday, and the number of COVID patients in intensive care has jumped from 5 to 8. The overall hospital occupancy rate is 96.5%, while ICU occupancy is just over 77%. The number of weekly COVID-19 vaccinations has dropped sharply across the Thunder Bay district. Just 463 shots were administered last week. That's down from 805 the week before. According to the Ministry of Health, nearly 90% of people in the district aged 5 and up have gotten at least 1 dose, while nearly 86% have received at least 2 shots.
Thunder Bay City Council has signed off on a policy to ensure councillors running in this fall's municipal election don't have an unfair advantage. Also at last night's meeting, information was provided on current councillors' salaries before a vote in May on whether to increase their pay. Corey Nordstrom has more.
A report on the use of corporate resources in relation to the municipal election outlined a number of changes that councillors will need to know before their campaigns get underway, in efforts to level the playing field so incumbents don't have an unfair advantage. Changes will be seen in city media releases, advertising, and social media to ensure that status and name recognition don't play a factor after nominations begin.
They're saying, well, how do you combat that? How do you, get around that feeling that as incumbents, the current council and mayor have that edge. And so how do we provide this information to the general public?
You will see a change in the way that we send out media releases and public messaging. So I think that may get the public's attention in understanding that incumbent candidates, we will not be referring to them by their name. We will be saying the mayor of Thunder Bay, the councillor representing West Fort.
A candidate information session will be held in April, and West Fort's Kristen Oliver thinks this should be included in that meeting.
This is part of the education that we can definitely provide to potential candidates, that, we're trying to ensure that there's balance and fairness and equity to the election process.
Also on the agenda Monday night, the annual expense report on council, boards, and committees. Mayor Bill Morrow, being council's only full-time employee, makes a total of over $128,000. Last year, the mayor cast the lone vote against a yearly increase in wages. With the same vote coming in May, he isn't leaning in that direction anymore.
Given that it was in the middle of the pandemic, I just thought it was something that I would do at that time. But going forward, no, I think it's a good system. It keeps the politics out of it as best it can be, even though for whatever reason it's a highly political issue for the electorate.
A counselor needs to be remunerated. There's no doubt in my mind. This is they talk about it being a part-time job, but I put in 45 to 60 hours a week, and I feel very strongly that one should be compensated for that.
Council also discussed the necessary funding for expanding the city's archives and records center. Though councillors had the opportunity to ask questions about the $3.5 million request for the upgrades, the funding won't be official on the budget list until the next term of council. Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
The century-old lift bridge between the Mission and McKellar Islands could get some much-needed work done to it. The city is currently looking for engineering firms to take on the project, mainly to strengthen the road deck of the crossing. The 111-year-old bridge over the McKellar River can currently only accommodate alternating one-way traffic at this time, with traffic lights set up at either end. While the bridge hasn't been lifted for vessels in more than a decade, that capability is something the city will have to consider prior to beginning any work, including any plans to widen the road deck. That's because if the McKellar River is still considered navigable, the lift bridge may need to be able to allow boats to cross, according to Transport Canada rules. It's unclear exactly what the finished project will look like. City officials say the work likely won't be finished until 2024.
The Community Economic Development Commission has announced the retirement of CEO Eric Zakrzewski. He'll officially step down this summer after spending almost 3 years at the helm of the CEDC. The majority of his tenure has been during the pandemic and spent dealing with the impacts on the local business community. Zakrzewski believes the CEDC's strategic plans will lead to job creation and economic recovery in the city. The anticipated return of cruise ships this summer and new developments in the mining sector are two reasons for optimism. And while the pandemic has been difficult, Zakrzewski says the CEDC has still made significant strides over the last 2 years.
Thunder Bay have led the nation in the rural northern and immigration pilot for immigration statistics, new immigrants coming in, seeking permanent residency under the program, and us matching them up with employers that desperately need skilled workers. So as of this year right now, we've achieved over 250 placements and referrals under that program alone.
Zakrzewski will stay on the job until his retirement at the end of August.
A new floating water park is in the works for Boulevard Lake this summer. A former city resident who runs similar attractions in Manitoba is working with the city to bring in a Splish Splash water park. Mitchell Ringos has the story.
Splish Splash water parks have been operating in Minnedosa and Morden, Manitoba for several years. Company owner Jerry Champagne, who used to live in Thunder Bay, says they not only receive great feedback from people in those towns, but they've also seen a large percentage of visitors traveling from other communities for some summer fun. The local version will be set up at Boulevard Lake, and it comes at the same time the city is building a new $1 million jumpstart playground at Boulevard this summer. Champagne thought this was the perfect time to bring a floating water park to his former hometown.
We are signing a 3-year deal with Thunder Bay. So we'll be there at least 3 years, and we're hoping the 3-year renewal after that. And, if it's successful, it'll be like the mini pet course that's there. It'll just be open every summer.
Champagne is hoping to have the attraction ready to go near the end of June. and it would remain at Boulevard Park for the summer. The water park consists of 11 different fun options, including a slide tower, column bridge, trampoline, and more, all connected into one giant park. Splish Splash will be open daily with day passes and hourly rates available and a limit of 100 people at a time. Champagne says for anyone worrying about not getting on, rotations will let everyone have a turn.
50% of the people are buying 1 and 2 hour passes. So there's always a continuous turnover. So every half an hour, basically, because we load every half hour. So that means every half hour there's 15, 20, 30 people coming off. So there's always a rotation of people coming off and on.
Champagne says he's aware of Boulevard Lake's water quality issues, and it was a talking point with the city. But he says with the improved water flow in the lake following the recent dam upgrades, everyone involved felt safe to move ahead with the project.
And if it turns out that the water quality is horrible, then we'll have to cross that bridge when we get there. But going in, we feel confident that we can operate and people be safe.
Champagne says they're already looking for summer lifeguards, as with staffing shortages, the demand is higher than ever, and he encourages anyone interested to reach out. Mitchell Ringos, TBT News.
Well, I'm sure people will have a lot of fun